Hi there, so it's Dell back from Spartan Racing. So I had a couple of requests to do some of my force feedback settings for Race Room and R Factor 2. So I'm just going to start off with Race Room. I haven't played Race Room for quite a few months, so I reinstalled it again the other day and went through some of the setups and started playing around to get the force feedback to how I would like it. And one of the things which was a bit enlightening was the way Race Room produces its force feedback. Unlike sort of R Factor 2, which is literally raw data that you can that it pumps out, Race Room has a tendency to seems to be filtered in some way. There's a lot of settings, and it's really difficult to work your way through and find really what the best settings are, because there's so many options, and the way that the data is delivered, it just feels a bit different to a lot of other sims. And so I did spend a bit of time sort of backward and forwarding and trying to get a result that was pleasing for me. And I think I've come up with something which sort of works for me. It's maybe not going to work for everybody, but it seems to work for me. So my settings on my wheel are sort of as follows. So what I've got is obviously with the Fanatec DD2, which I'm doing this for. Again, like most Fanatec wheelbases, you have 5 tuning menus. So I've got my Race Room one set up on tuning menu 4. I've got 1 for ACC, number 2 for iRacing, number 3 for R Factor 2, and number 4 for Race Room, and number 5 for F1. So with my Race Room settings, like always, I always have my maximum steering angle on auto. I let the steering angle be determined by the game. And my overall force feedback, I always have 100%. And the reason for that is because that gives me all the dynamic range that the motor can generate. If you start playing with this and reducing this down, you will have a propensity to maybe introduce clipping. And I've done some testing with some little clipping graphs. Assetto Corsa, the original Assetto Corsa, had a really good little app that could show you clipping quite well. And I spent a lot of time going down with sort of the lower recommended force feedback settings and then bringing the force feedback in the game, and the game sort of hits a roof. It sort of hits the ceiling, and then it doesn't give you any more because you've got it turned down, so you're not getting all the dynamic range that the base is able to produce. So I always leave this at 100%, and then I make the adjustment to the actual forces in the game. So that stays at 100%. I turned on the FFB linearity. When you hold mouse over any of these, it gives you a bit of a description what they are. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory, others are a little bit confusing. So I just spend time playing with things like turning these things on and off and seeing how it feels. And I found by having this force feedback linearity turned on, it seemed to help a wee bit. My natural damper, I have at 65. My natural friction at 3%. The natural inertia is turned off. The FFP interpolation filter is turned off. I have the force effects intensity at 100. The game force effect strength at 100. The spring strength at 100. The game dampening effect at 100. I have the brake level indicator off because I don't have Fanatec brakes. I use Husqvarna Sprints. And a vibration strength at 100. Now, as far as the dynamic force feedback, I've left this as default. This is just how it basically came out of the box when I installed the software. So I haven't changed any of that. And the same with the vibration. I haven't changed any of this. I just leave it as it is. LEDs, I don't make any changes to those. I use a HRS Z1 Pro X dash. So I've got all my lights and information on the little dash. You'll see that on one of my other videos on the channel. This intelligent telemetry mode, the little screen that is on the direct drive wheels, I don't turn that on. Again, the dash that I have sits in front of that, so I don't use it anyway. And then what I do is I save that information and I create a profile and save it, and then it's really important that you do check the default button here. So if I was going to use this recommended one from Fanatec, I would check that as a default, so every time the game starts up it will pick that up, but I use the one that I've created and I have that as default, so when I start Race Room it comes up straight into tuning and menu number 4 with these settings. If I was to start, say, iRacing, and that was to come up, it goes into tuning menu number 3, so I've got iRacing number 3, not number 2. And if I was to go to Assetto Corsa and load that up, you'll see that's at number 1. So that's how I how I like to set things up, and I guess how they sort of should be set up. So yeah, so these are all my settings that I have on my wheelbase. So in the next part, we'll load up Race Room and have a look at the settings that I've got in Race Room. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so here we are in Race Room, and I'll just go straight to the settings menu and go to control settings and force feedback. So basically what I have here is I have my force feedback on, inverted force feedback is on, my gamepad rumble is off. So my force feedback intensity is at 65%. I left smoothing, I got just a tiny little bit of smoothing. My force feedback spring strength is at 55%. My force feedback damper is at 5%. My steering force intensity is 100%. My force feedback minimum force is at 1%. Now, if you find, I did play around quite a bit with this, and I did have it up at about 10%, and I was getting really bad oscillation when I was just going dead straight. So I found that by turning this right down, it actually stopped that. So if you find that you're getting an oscillation, just check this this minimum force and turn it down. So my understeer is at 30%, my vertical load 55, lateral load 55, my steering rack is at 50, 5% slip effect, 5% engine vibration, 15% curb vibration, and I don't have any settings set for shift effect or collision effect. So these are the settings that I've been using. There's also I left basically all this in as default, which is the speed sensitivity and these minimum and maximum steering speeds. I haven't changed anything here. This is the only thing I did do is I just added a little bit of dead zone in my upper and lower brake pedals, and that was only just so that when I push down full throttle I can get full throttle just before I get to the end of the throw. And if I'm resting on, say, the brake, and if you rest too hard sometimes you're going to add a little bit, so just if I'm resting on the brake, then I don't have any braking happening, or if I'm resting on the clutch I don't have the clutch running. So but most of this is all pretty much just left as default. So the main things is these settings here. Now admittedly this was all done with the McLaren, the GT3 McLaren. Now if you go into a race or innocent testing or whatever, so we'll just load up a practice session with this car. So if I go into the drive option, now the FOV on this isn't correct because I'm recording this off a single screen and I normally have this on triple screen, so it's a bit compressed. So if you head out into this in the car, and you might find that strength on the actual base is a bit too much, so you can sort of, if it's too much for you, just pause the game and then you can easily just go to the options, go to control settings, force feedback, and then you can just make a change on the fly. That's one thing I do like about this sim. There's a couple of other sims that do this as well, where you can just go in and make these changes, bring it down if it's a bit much, and then go back and just resume and head straight off. So actually, I don't mind this at all. It's probably a little bit too strong. I probably think that maybe the way it's sort of feeling is I'd probably bring the force feedback down, say from 65 down to maybe about 60. But I'm getting a nice sort of feeling through the car. I can definitely feel that, that's for sure. And I'm feeling like I can feel sort of the resistance of the tyres. So like I said, that force feedback is maybe a little strong. So again, it's really easy just to change. Just come in options, control settings, force feedback, and I'll drop this down to say 60, and just oh damn it, sorry, just go back out and give it another test and see how this feels for me. And I'm not getting any oscillation coming through the base whatsoever when I'm just in a straight line. If I let go of the wheel, you get a tiny little bit of shuddering, but nothing of any note. So and I can definitely feel all the forces of the ripple strips and everything. So that's just a brief look at those settings and the first sort of go back in Race Room for quite a while. So hopefully those guys that requested this, I hope that helps a bit and gives you a starting point. Again, like I always say on anything that I do like this, these are things that I find that suit me. It may not suit everybody, but hopefully it's a starting point and you can build on it there, or find smarter people than me that know a lot more about it that will give you some better ideas. So thanks very much, and I will talk to you real soon. Hope everybody's staying safe and looking after themselves. Bye now.